together through this hurting world and breathe into us the cool breezes of healing. Show us the ways to honor our truths as we elevate the truths of each other. Amen. The world is a complicated place. The end. Just kidding. In truth, the world is sad and wonderful, lonely and crowded, greedy and giving. Sometimes the world disappoints us, but then sometimes it sneaks up out of nowhere and knocks our socks off. In today's gospel reading, Jesus has his socks knocked off. Probably his sandals knocked off. The author of Luke explains that Jesus is amazed at the apparent faith of the Roman soldier. More specifically, Jesus encounters a centurion. And a centurion is a middle-rank officer who commands about 100 men, who so impresses him with his show of faith that Jesus proclaims the soldier the most devout man in all the land. The word in its original Greek that the author uses here is akin to our English word marveled. Jesus marveled that a Gentile, and a military man at that, would believe so well in the healing power of a Jewish stranger. In fact, Jesus is so pleasantly surprised that he heals the soldier's servant from afar. Traditional readings of this story teach that we should all marvel at the faith of the centurion. I guess we, like Jesus, should be surprised that a man of the empire would find truth and comfort in someone so apparently lowly, certainly marginalized, by all accounts, strange. We should be surprised because we should not expect the colonizer to care about the colonized, right? I mean, that seems crazy, right? Everybody knows that the Romans were jerks and all total villains, and anyway, nobody got along with anybody back then. So, you see where I'm going with this. Perhaps we're supposed to read this as a story about surprise, but I read it as a story about assumptions. Assumptions that we know how other people move through the world. Assumptions that people who don't look like us or live like us can't possibly be like us. The centurion is a full human person, just like I'm a full human person, and you're a full human person, and Jesus is a full human person, among other things. And people are complex. But forget about complex though, right? Because we know that the centurion is an enemy of the Jews, and therefore we know that it's unheard of for a centurion to believe in Jesus' power. But what makes us so sure that we know all that? What makes us so sure that we know anything about anybody? What's really underneath the surprise we're supposed to feel when we read this story is an assumption that we know things. And couldn't we, as the church, maybe use a little less assuming that we know things? As some of you may be aware, I serve as a chaplain at the Tennessee Prison for Women. The friends I've made on the inside are all too familiar with the world, and frankly the church, making assumptions about them. In the years since I've begun work there, I have heard all manner of terrible words spoken about and to them. Criminal, predator, monster. Is there truth to the fact that these women have done harm? Yes. Is there also truth to the fact that harm has been done to them? Yes. Do we have a criminal justice system that attempts to account for both of these facts? That subverts our traditional assumptions that the people on the inside are bad while the people on the outside are good? No. The system we have, the system we have built, is a system of retributive justice. It asks, what law has been broken, and who needs to be punished for this? It won't surprise you to know that, generally speaking, this system doesn't really benefit anybody. Recidivism rates are at an all-time high. In fact, incarceration rates are also at an all-time high, despite the fact that the rate of crime has been steady for some time now. But we push on, holding up conventional wisdom that criminals deserve to be locked away. The problem, though, is is that when we usher offenders out of sight, we deny both victims and offenders the chance to heal. A better system, a more caring and responsible system, is a system of restorative justice. In a context so badly in need of transparent and supportive conversation about feelings and needs, restorative justice could make significant inroads with regard to the repair and regeneration of families and individual lives. Because of its focus on reparation for harm, practices inspired by restorative justice can be applied not only to specific instances of crime, but also to general instances of hurt and betrayal. One particular model of restorative justice, family group conferencing, is in use across the United States. Family group conferencing brings the communities of those who have been harmed together with the communities of those who have done harm, and all work collaboratively toward healthy and productive solutions. Writing for the Prison Journal, Jeff Latimer defined restorative justice as a process whereby all the parties with a stake in a particular offense come together to resolve collectively how to deal with the aftermath of the offense and its implications for the future. Rather than traditional notions of justice that focus on the laws that have been broken, restorative justice shifts the conversation towards the harm that's been done. Restorative justice is less interested in retribution than reparation and perhaps transformation. Its key elements are voluntariness, truth-telling, and a face-to-face encounter. The fundamental concepts of restorative justice are: crime is fundamentally a violation of people and interpersonal relationships. Violations create obligations and liabilities. Restorative justice seeks to heal and put right to wrongs. As you can tell from these tenets, restorative justice presents a middle way between punitive retribution and willful ignorance. Restorative justice acknowledges the hurt on both sides of any wrongdoing and brings intentionality to the process of healing this hurt. Restorative justice says no to the assumptions we typically bring to this kind of work, specifically to the assumptions that victims want their offenders to be locked away and punished, sometimes for years and years. When I think about the ways restorative justice could be useful in my own life, I think about the two men who assaulted me outside my house on my birthday in 2010. I don't believe that there are any real villains in the world, and I know that every action has a narrative behind it. What is the narrative behind their choice to hurt me? Did they feel pressured? Did they feel scared? Did they ever think about that night? And if they do, are they sad about it? I will never have the chance to ask these questions because I was not offered a restorative justice experience. Sometimes I imagine what I would say if I were, and I truly believe that I would feel less afraid in my everyday life as a result of that kind of conversation. Restorative justice humanizes all the players in a situation of hurt or crime because it gives people the chance to listen to each other. It steps around assumptions of right and wrong and focuses instead on harm and healing. It's a middle way. It's a way of grace. So let's imagine for a second that Jesus isn't surprised by the faith of the centurion. Let's imagine that he's helping us realize how harmful our own assumptions can be. Don't forget, after all, that in the version of this story that appears in Matthew, Jesus has just come from giving what turns out to be his most famous sermon, a key feature of which is, love your enemies. Is the run-in with the centurion like Jesus applying his message directly to an example of said message? I hope so. I hope this is God's way of showing us that Jesus has come to town to shake things up. Jesus came to town to say, hey, here's a new way of doing life, and then to immediately present us with opportunities to practice. To me, this is a very caring version of the divine, one that bows her head low in understanding, but also holds us to a higher standard of behavior. She lives into the binary nature of humanity. She has done harm, and she has had harm done to her, and also subverts this binary by presenting a middle way, to hold anger and love, hope and anguish, belief and skepticism, all together at once. What is the middle way for those who have been banished? I want to create space within the biblical imaginary for my insider friends to find themselves and find themselves loved. For many women experiencing incarceration, they have either forgot what it feels like to be close to God or have never begun to imagine themselves as connected to God in this way. It is the job of the church to illuminate theology with opportunities for those who suffer to see God within their suffering. We must hold space for the Spirit to breathe new life into everyone. One place to start is the UCC's deep commitment to social justice. After all, what is the purpose of church if not to serve the needs of the world? Thinking of the church as servant means that rather than providing guidance for the world, the church allows itself to be guided by the world. Rather than setting itself apart from culture, the church allows itself to be absorbed by culture. As a servant to the needs of all creations of the holy, the church will empty itself of prejudice, entitlement, and self-righteousness. The church will debase itself. It will cry out for the suffering of the world. It will teach the world nothing, but will learn from the world everything. Within this vision, the church is defined as empathetic, malleable, and socially conscious. This means fighting every day against the lies we tell about the monsters behind the bars and the lies we tell about each other. It means approaching our community and the world with compassion. It means asking more questions. It means casting assumptions aside. In its most ideal iteration, the UCC is populated with a collective of members who compel themselves to be agents of change. These members will understand that the only true way to live out our Christian witness is through humbling ourselves before those who suffer. This kind of witness calls for a commitment to compassionate activism, but first for an acknowledgement and rejection of our own privilege. As a mainline Protestant denomination, the UCC must submit itself to a critical examination of the insidious ways that supremacy, this includes white supremacy, patriarchy, heteronormativism, and capitalist class hierarchies, has driven us away from God. Before we can serve or even understand the needs of those around us and on the margins, we must strive to dismantle the frameworks of supremacy in our own lives. Through our deep commitment to social justice, the UCC can become a symbol of the ways in which the love of the holy draws us fiercely together. We can serve each other so as to respect each other. We can work toward collective community in the ways that each of us must. Some must stoop down, and some must be helped up. By focusing on the manifestation of the sacraments of love and relationship, we move ever closer to each other and ever closer to God. We are mile markers on the road to possibility. We clear the path for each other, sometimes by stepping off the path ourselves. All in all, people need to be shown forgiveness while also being empowered to have agency over the forgiveness they bestow. In an essay on the topic of forgiveness, John Patton writes, "Forgiveness has to do with the relationship between God and humankind and with the relationships of human beings to each other. Genuine forgiveness helps us to move through and past the shame that our offenders have heaped upon us. At the same time, it helps us to move through and past the shame that our own offenses have called up within ourselves." Patton goes on, "Those who deal with forgiveness after abuse and violence remind us that expecting or demanding forgiveness from a person can itself be abusive. They also emphasize that forgiveness, if it takes place, is part of a broader healing process, not an isolated event. Compassionate, service-oriented practices such as restorative justice can slowly open the door for the kind of forgiveness that is needed to heal the emotional wounds between enemies, between friends, throughout the world. As a church community, we are only as limited as the willingness and imagination we bring to the work. As is often the case with transformative action, those who are afraid will throw many obstacles in the way. There are those in this country who benefit from the machine of mass incarceration, and they will continue doing the shameful work of dehumanization as they deal in human lives. We can counter this darkness with light, though, and we must strive on towards this end. There is strong and valuable work being done to tear down the physical and psychological barriers between and among insiders and outsiders. And before we do that, let's tear down the barriers between and among ourselves. In today's contemporary testimony, Kenyan poet Warsan Shire speaks of a world that is hurting everywhere, everywhere, everywhere. Does it hurt outside the walls of this church? What about within the walls of your heart? Where does the hurt begin, and how far does it extend? Who has done you harm, and who have you harmed as a result? How can we be brave in the face of these cycles and say the harm ends with me? The fear and the assumptions end with me. The love begins with me. The poet Miller Williams gives this advice: have compassion for everyone you meet, even if they don't want it. What seems conceit, bad manners, or cynicism is always a sign of things no ears have heard, no eyes have seen. You do not know what wars are going on down there where the spirit meets the bone. To stop talking for a moment, to make room for others for a moment. This is the way God wishes us peace. When we work to be in relationship with those who are different from us, which is to say, with every person in the world who is not us. When we seek to understand, when we listen to, believe in, and validate the lived experience of others, when we're not surprised that a Roman soldier could have faith in a Jewish miracle worker, or that a woman in prison could be a survivor and a perpetrator both, or that the person sitting next to you is living a full human life that is completely different from your own. Every 12 weeks or so, the women at TPFW graduate from our family reunification program. At each graduation ceremony so far, I have read these words by Dutch priest Henry Nouwen. Keep unmasking the world about you for what it is: manipulative, controlling, power-hungry, destructive. The world tells you many lies about who you are, and you simply have to be realistic enough to remind yourself of this. Every time you feel hurt, offended, or rejected, you have to dare to say to yourself, these feelings are not telling me the truth. The truth is that I am the chosen child of God, precious in God's eyes. Keep looking for people and places where your truth is spoken, and where you are reminded of your deepest identity as the chosen one, the limited, sometimes broken love of those who share our humanity can often point us to the truth of who we are, precious in God's eyes. Celebrate your chosenness constantly by saying thank you to God for having chosen you, and thank you to all who remind you of your chosenness. When we claim and constantly reclaim the truth of being the chosen ones, we soon discover within ourselves a deep desire to reveal to others their own chosenness. I choose myself by choosing others. I choose myself by choosing God. I choose God by choosing others. I know that I am not a perfect person, and I am not always right. Sometimes I forget that I'm chosen, and that forgetting hides the chosenness of others. But we're all in this together, and we're all doing our best. The world is a complicated place, but God wants us all to make it. Don't lose sight of the gift of community. Walk through life together on the sacred road to healing. Amen.
Amen.